It's 2:14 a.m. She's on the bathroom floor, phone glowing in her hand. He's typing. 3 dots. They stop. They start again. For 6 months, she's read those dots like scripture. Hot, cold, adore, ignore. Tonight he writes, maybe you're just too much. She apologizes. She doesn't know why. She just knows the floor is cold and the apology is automatic. She thinks she's in love. She's not. She's in a loop, and the loop has a name. I read the stories of 100 toxic couples, letters, transcripts, confessions sent at 3 a.m. Different faces, the same machine underneath. Toxic love isn't loud, it's engineered. A quiet psychology runs under the screaming, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Today, the 3 gears of that machine: how it hooks you, why your brain calls it love, and the twist nobody expects: what happens to the person who built it. Stay to the end. The last part rewrites everything. In the 1950s, psychologist B.F. Skinner designed a series of simple boxes to study how behavior is shaped. Inside each chamber was a hungry animal and a metal lever. When the lever was pressed, a food pellet dropped. At first, Skinner programmed the dispenser to release food every single time. The rats learned the pattern, pressed the lever only when hungry, and spent the rest of their time grooming or sleeping. The reward was guaranteed, making their actions calm and orderly. Then, Skinner broke the pattern. He adjusted the machine so the food arrived randomly. Sometimes a single press worked. Sometimes it took 10 presses, or 50, or none at all. Under this unpredictable system, known as intermittent reinforcement, the rats became obsessive. They ignored sleep, bypassed grooming, and pressed the lever thousands of times, desperate for the next drop. Unpredictability rewired their nervous systems, turning a simple action into a compulsion. This is the variable ratio schedule, the most addictive behavioral trigger known to science. It survives because your brain experiences unexpected rewards with a massive spike of dopamine. This laboratory setup maps directly onto late-night texts, cold shoulders, and sudden bursts of passion. When warmth is followed by ice, and affection is followed by sudden silence, the brain stops looking for love and starts chasing the reward. That's not romance. It's a variable ratio schedule with a heartbeat. In 1997, therapist Patrick Carnes identified this exact psychological trap, naming it the trauma bond. This biological attachment develops in the presence of danger, exploitation, and relief. When a partner alternates between emotional threat and sudden warmth, the nervous system binds itself to the source of its fear to find safety. We mistake this survival response for intense chemistry, believing we have found a rare, fated connection. But the data reveals a mechanical truth. In an archive of 100 relationship case files, 90 describe the exact same sequence: a cold shoulder, an explosive argument, and then a sudden wave of overwhelming affection. They live the same cycle of cruelty: a scream, a gift, and then the best night of their lives. The uniformity shows that the hook is the unpredictability itself, rather than personality chemistry. When affection is rare and erratic, the brain clings tighter, desperate to secure the next drop of relief. The partner is not loving you more, they are training you. It is a variable ratio schedule with a human pulse. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, what comes next will explain why. In a laboratory at the University of Washington, psychologist John Gottman spent decades watching hundreds of couples fight behind one-way mirrors. He did not need years of history to read their future. Instead, he analyzed just 15 minutes of a single, ordinary conflict. From that brief snapshot, Gottman could predict which marriages would survive and which would end in divorce, eventually achieving an accuracy rate of over 90%. The data showed that the ultimate driver of relational collapse is not explosive anger, nor is it the sudden shock of infidelity. The most lethal poison is contempt, a cold mix of hostility and disgust. In Gottman's lab, this single emotion acted like acid on the human immune system and the bond alike. What feels like a deeply personal, chaotic tragedy is actually a predictable script. The relationship is no longer a mystery. It is completely legible. Criticism attacks a behavior. Contempt attacks an identity. If criticism says you forgot to lock the door, contempt says you are stupid and careless. It abandons resolution, seeking instead to establish superiority by making the partner feel small. In daily life, this hostility disguises itself in sarcasm, mocking laughter, and eye rolls. When the cruelty draws blood, the attacker instantly retreats behind defensive shields, claiming, "I was only joking," or accusing the other of being too sensitive. This deflection forces the victim to doubt their own sanity, slowly internalizing the insult. But the damage spreads far beyond the mind. Gottman's clinical data showed that chronic exposure to contempt has a direct biological cost, predicting weakened immune systems and a higher frequency of physical illness. The body registers the psychological assault as a physical threat. This is the second gear of the toxic love machine. It is the slow, systematic rewrite of your self-worth, piece by piece, until your inner voice begins to echo the abuse. You start apologizing for simply existing. The fantasy of explosive revenge is a trap. It keeps you tethered to the very machine you are trying to escape, waiting for a satisfaction that never comes. The truth about the partner who ran hot and cold is far colder. They were never a mastermind playing a calculated game. They were just another cog in the mechanism, driven by the same compulsive loop. Their addiction is to the chase, never to genuine closeness. When you finally step away and the quiet of freedom begins to settle, the silence is broken. A message arrives. "I miss you. I've changed." This is the Hoover. It feels like a breakthrough, a sign of deep remorse. But it is actually a biological panic response. The machine has stopped dispensing, and the operator is experiencing withdrawal. They seek the control of the lever, not intimacy. They need to know the machine still works. To break the cycle, you do not need a grand confrontation. You don't beat them, you become unplayable. Subscribe to the channel for more psychological insights. When you ignore that message, the machine starves. A calm, absolute non-reaction denies the system its only fuel. The frantic texts and sudden calls that follow are the automatic movements of an operator realizing the lever no longer works. The partner who once controlled the emotional climate of the room is suddenly revealed to be just as trapped as you were. They are now the rat in the chamber, furiously pressing a metal bar, waiting for a pellet that will never fall. This is the final reversal. The power belonged entirely to the response they extracted from you. Your silence completely dismantles the board, far beyond any tactical gameplay. By refusing to pull the lever, you reclaim the agency that was systematically stripped away, landing on a quiet, unyielding vacancy. The machine only runs while you pull the lever. In that quiet silence, your life finally begins again. Which gear sounds most familiar? Tell me in the comments.